Good morning to everybody, depending on where you're from. And thanks for your support and choosing to spend time with us, as we discuss a very important part of the brain. So I think executive function must be it seems to be a very popular topic. We actually have more than 600 people registered for the webinar, and it's nice to see people gaining interest in the brain, and certainly the executive function is an important part of the brain. So we are discussing six must-have mental skills, yeah? And if you are new to BrainFit, please allow me just a couple of minutes to make a quick introduction. So my name is Cheryl. I'm the founder of BrainFit. I'm trained as a pediatric physiotherapist or physical therapist, and started working with the brain a long time ago. So immediately after I graduated from Australia, I had come back to work in the Children's Hospital in Singapore. And so that started my work with the brain. So I've been training brains for years and years now. And I have two daughters as well. Isabel is 10, and I have a little one at 7 years old, Victoria. And they have taught me a lot about, brain and nurturing a brain in a very real sense as well. So it's a topic that I love. I love my job. I love being a parent and see them, develop. As I'm sure all of you, in a very similar way, if you're a parent would feel, right? And so I started BrainFit some years back now, back in 2001. And you see that we have a panelist, from different countries, and it's because BrainFit has grown to the different countries. So we offer cognitive training programs, so that will be brain training programs through our learning centers, and we also work with partner schools, yeah. And you can see some of our centers on this slide. So we offer enrichment programs for babies as young as 9 months through guided play, teaching parents how to engage the babies at a young age, all the way to older people. And we also run a preschool in some location, including the one in Singapore. Here you can see some of our children and students at work. These are some awards we have won and some of our partners in the field of brain science. But let's get into the topic proper. So we are talking about executive function. And I really just want to talk about two parts, right? And this is a 3-webinar series, by the way. And this is the first part of the 3-part series. So we will be diving a little bit deeper into understanding, exploring executive function. So I want to talk about executive function in the brain and then executive function in everyday life. So today is really understanding the mental skills. We will be talking about how then do we develop them, right? Which is the key question. And we will do it in the next webinar, right? So the key focus for today is really to first understand. I think it's important so that when we apply strategies, we are not applying in a vacuum, and we really understand, what are the important parts, right? What we're trying to achieve. So I think understanding helps us to set the right goals. So it's always good to get as much understanding as we can, for something that we want to build. So let's look at executive function in the brain. But I do want to start with a question, right? Now, just for everybody, and it's so nice to thank you for, responding on the chat. So if I would ask, what executive function skills do you know about? And again, there's no right or wrong, right? So does anything come to your mind? Anybody? So you just feel free to, drop notes on the chat, right? So if you talk about executive function, it's a serious term. Anybody has any idea what comes into your mind? Attention span. Surely somebody would think about that. Or, are you thinking about habits? Working memory. Thank you. Punima, thank you. Working memory, self-regulation. Yeah. Self-awareness. Elvina, abstract thinking. Organization. Geraldine, thank you. Organizational skills. Social skills. Sharifa, thank you. Yeah. Any more things that come into your mind? Self-monitoring. Yes. Nice. Self-control. Yeah, nice. Purpose, Juliet, yeah, and Sharon, working, I suppose, is working memory, yeah. So, yeah, thank you. No, so these are all kind of different terms, right? So we're going into self-awareness, to thinking, to memory, and it seems all quite complex, and organization and reasoning, right? And all kind of distinct skills of its own. But yet, we are all kind of like thinking, using the same umbrella term, which is executive function. So I think a lot of what, we are all sharing does point to that, but that's also why it can be a little bit confusing, right? So is it like one thing or is it like many things? Okay. So I'm going to go straight into the 6 skills that I want to talk about. Now, executive function skills refer to a group of skills, as many of you have pointed out, working memory, etc., etc. They help us fundamentally to do a few things, right? I think. And obviously, we call it executive function. It's like the CEO. It's got an executive role, right? Management. So it's higher order. Okay, so it's higher up level and it's in charge of a few different responsibilities. Now, I have coded it slightly, right? I think it helps me because of the fact that there's so many discrete parts, right? So this helps me to organize, right? So the green, which is really planning and organization, it's really around your goals, right? In the last webinar, we talked about learning mindsets. And one of my point was that it's so important to get the right goal. Are you studying for an exam or are you studying to learn? You should be studying to learn, by the way, right? Because then your strategies are very different from if you were just studying to score an exam and then beyond that, you don't care, right? So it's important, right? So what is our goal, right? Because the goal influences our emotions because we are off track. We might then become frustrated, right? And we want to bring ourselves back to the goal. So there's this kind of goal orientation. We want to get somewhere. I just want to have fun. And that could be the goal for a child, not necessarily a very, studious goal, right? My goal is to have as much fun as I want, I can possibly in school. And therefore I have this set of behaviors, perhaps inappropriate, but I want to get my goal, right? So we all have that goals and we think about how we can plan and execute our steps and, organize ourselves to achieve that. So that's that one skill when we describe executive function. So certainly planning organization, as some of you have described, comes into there, right? So, but it works around orientating us to achieve something, okay? Now, the second is regulation. So some of you mentioned self-control, self-awareness, right? Obviously, you need to be aware and to manage yourself, right? So in the technical term, you often will see impulse control, right? So there is, you could have an impulsive emotion. So it will be, an emotional regulation that we're talking about. You could be impulsive motorically, right? Movement wise. Yeah. So physically impulsive. Yeah. So that's all under how you can regulate under the regulation umbrella, whether is it motor inhibition or a cognitive inhibition or an emotional inhibition, right? It basically means that you don't get hijacked, okay? And we'll go into each one of them. And obviously, that's what our aim is for this evening, yeah, to get a little bit more depth. So that's the blue, right? So you have the goal that's kind of orientating you, your compass, right? Your guiding light. You have your okay, I'm not going to get hijacked. I'm not going to get too carried away, right? I bring myself back to the goal, okay? Or I just control myself that much, when something unpleasant comes along, right? That's kind of pushing me away from my goal. I can manage that situation. Now I have the pink, right? The bright pink, where there is attention and focus, cognitive flexibility, and working memory. Now, this is your powerhouse, right? So this is really around learning and intelligence, your thinking facilities, okay? So when you are actually trying to understand a concept, for example, you go to school, I'm trying to do well in science, right? In English, whatever, right? So I have my plan, but I got to learn. Now, when I'm sitting in the classroom, right, what's then going to help me to learn and get all this knowledge into my mind is this workhorse, right? This learning engine that includes paying attention, that includes being flexible in your thinking, that includes working memory. All right. So I think of them as the cognitive skills, right? Your thinking skills. Okay. So then you have one other part, which is higher order thinking as well. And that is where you evaluate yourself. So how have I done? Okay, a little bit different from just awareness and inhibition. This is very meta learning, okay, or metacognition, where you are almost looking at yourself, critiquing yourself. Cheryl, you've done well. No, Cheryl, you can do a better job, right? So that's how we then maybe set a better goal or align ourselves closer to the goal to reach it. Okay, so that part is really because some people might think of executive function as metacognitive skills, right? And they're not wrong. So you can see that it's all different, but they are all serving one purpose, that is to achieve what you set your heart to achieve, right? So it does start with the goal, but then you need your tools to achieve it, right? So it's that set of skills that keep you on track, yeah, and help you to become better, and keep moving you forward. Okay, so that's executive function. Now, the research is interesting, right? So we scientists are now postulating, right, and we don't know yet. I mean, because it's certainly a complex brain area, because there's so many connections and integration that's needed between the different parts of the brain for all these skills to come together. And to be functioning optimally, to be fit, right? And but some scientists have started to say that are these individual brain networks, and there's some suggestion that perhaps it's really anchored by three main things. So the working memory, so the thinking engine, right? Really, and cognitive flexibility. Okay, so cognitive flexibility and the importance of that is increasing, and our understanding of that is increasing as well. I think before that we were talking a lot about working memory. Okay, but now they're saying that could it be this, and then of course your impulse inhibition, and then you have your cognitive flexibility, your adaptation, right? Your shifting depending on how things are happening, and your thinking that guides your planning, rather than one area that is really just exclusive to planning, because we're trying to map out what's happening in the brain as well. Where are these different networks? Okay, so some suggestion has come out that it could be really the interaction of cognitive flexibility and working memory, and then you have your self-monitoring, which is more your emotions. Impulse control is more where you're more in touch of your emotion, in touch with your emotions, right? So you're having a higher order, a macro perspective, of yourself, yeah, from higher up. And then with your thinking facilities that give you the self-monitoring. And finally, attention and focus, that's one key part as well, is really so many things working together. And this I would agree, because, we often talk about attention being the number one concern of parents who come to Brain Fit, with their children, right? But the reality is that oftentimes the children, may not have an attentional weakness, like a pure attentional network weakness. It could be from different areas, right? So many things influence attention. So attention is really that, a skill that needs different parts that come together. So this we really, really see at the ground level a lot, right? Attention is a complex manifestation where you have good attention or weak attention of very many factors, so it is not so pure as one direct kind of part. Yeah, or one simple muscle, perhaps the way we think about that, if we think of the brains as different muscles, right? So it involves different parts coming together to give us attention. But that's a little bit more kind of like theoretical discussions of what's going on, right? But it's important as well, because then it guides how we might train up executive function, which, includes all these different areas. Now, if you are looking at the neuroscience of executive function, so earlier we described the skills, right? The capabilities, the behaviors that we want, to see in our children. And obviously, the different skills are all very important, right? But where do they reside, right? So we often think of our prefrontal cortex, the frontal part of the brain. So this is a side view of the brain, where this is your front and this is the back. So your higher order is always associated with the front. Whereas your movement is kind of at the back here, vision is kind of right at the back, or your auditory skills is kind of at the side. Now, they're all important, okay? But we're just talking about that boss, okay, that CEO. And people have used different terms. They're the conductor in an orchestra. You have your different instruments, right? Your drums, your strings, your keyboard. And then you have a conductor that's putting everything together. So hence the term executive. So we know that there's, and some people call it the top-down guidance of attention and thought, action and emotion. So there's a tremendous amount of activity, brain activity, that's going, from this area to the individual instruments, right? The control, the movement area, guiding you on what to do, but as well as feedback coming in as well. So it goes both ways, yeah. And more recently, interestingly, sorry, this is another view, right? This is a kind of a bit of an update, yeah. And this is a different orientation now. Sorry, I just couldn't find two that's facing the same way. Now, this is the front part of the brain, okay? So these are obviously, different authors, different groups of scientists, looking at this part of the brain. So you can see the prefrontal cortex, right? Very involved in executive function. But we are all also now starting to look more and more, right, at the cerebellum. Cerebellum is kind of your old brain. It's kind of at the back. In the past, we just think of it as a kind of an old movement brain, but we certainly know that movement has a lot of cross linkages into cognition and learning, right? And that's why we can use movement to improve math scores, to improve, academic performance and behaviors, right? But now we are starting to understand why more and more, right? Because of the involvement of the cerebellum directly also with executive function. So there's that cognitive part of it, right? And the networks. For those of you who are interested in neuroscience, right? This is what we're understanding. And there's also some interesting findings because this cerebellum has been a bit controversial. Like some researchers say, yes, it's involved. Some researchers say no. But now they're thinking that perhaps the confusion is because it depends on the time, the age that you're studying the subjects, right? So, and now there's some suggestion that the cerebellum plays a much larger role in a younger child. And now this start to have real implications for your training, right? It means movement is very important for the young child because cerebellum is it works heavily with registering movement, right? And through movement, you can then target cognition, right? And so we're now thinking that the cerebellum plays a bigger role, in executive function development in the younger child, whereas as your cortex, right, your cortical areas, that means your front parts of the brain, as this frontal part, which is really where executive function, the primary part of it is, as it develops, then it is only playing a more supportive role. Okay, so but certainly there are implications in how we then think about, oh wow, okay, how are we going to build up executive function at different ages, right? Because they are very important skills. Okay, so and a little bit of how they develop. So it develops across our entire age span until this red bar, 25, about thereabouts. So now 25 is kind of where we understand as when our brain fully matures. So it's long, right? But obviously huge growth spurt between 3 to 5 in the early years, right? A very unique growth spurt, yeah? And then, of course, there's still growth spurt opportunities around adolescence, yeah? Before it kind of settles. But we will be talking about, the different ages and certainly strategies, yeah, in our next webinar. So here today, we really want to go back and understand these very abstract sounding inhibition and flexibility. We think about flexibility for our hamstrings and sit and reach, right? Or yoga, like how does flexibility work in the brain? So we want to go and understand a little bit more of these skills before we talk about the strategies. Okay, now, so that's the technical part. For some of you, I know the neuroscience is what you're interested in, like us at BrainFit, right? But I know a lot of you parents, you just want to know, how am I going to help my child? Let's just tell me what to do. Yeah, so let's understand how these skills can impact, because by understanding that, then it gives us clues and make us know why we would then, want to do what we want to do. Okay, now I'm going to do, so this is a practical session, yeah. We are going to experience executive function together. And I'm going to go do it through one math question. This is a grade 4 math question. This is a Singapore grade 4, primary 4. Okay, so my daughter is in primary 4. I picked this up from a paper she was doing yesterday, actually, right? I thought it was a great question. It's 4 marks. It's 2 parts, okay? 2 marks each. So if you look at the scoring, right? So you're looking at about 4 minutes. Okay, so I'm going to give, we are adults, right? So I'm thinking, could we do it in under 4 minutes? Because these are for primary 4 kids, right? So let's aim for 2 minutes, maybe as adults, right? We might have math teachers around. Anybody math teachers? Maybe you would have 30 seconds or 1 minute, right? But we're going to work maximum up to 4 minutes and see how you go, yeah? Okay, now, okay, my child is only in preschool. Now, how is this relevant to me? Okay, This is very, very relevant to you, even if you have a child who's, a toddler or in preschool now, because the way we understand executive function, it's not content, okay? So don't think of it like fractions, okay? Because you're right. If I'm talking about fractions, if you have a child in preschool, it might not be directly relevant because, maybe very simple fractions, right? The concepts of that. Because, the content, maybe your child is just learning to count, right? Or at least know the numerals. But we don't think of executive function or any brain skill like that. It is not content. It is a muscle. It is a skill that is developing from young, but at the end, it has to go and solve this question as well. 7, 8 years, 9 years down the road, all right? The skills that your child as a preschooler has now, the same set of skills, working memory, cognitive flexibility, will eventually become mature and then tackle this question. That's why it's relevant. It's not content. Okay, so don't think about the brain like there's different contents that we need to teach, because a lot of people think like that and they ask us, what are you going to teach our child? No, we want to strengthen the skill so that they can then learn better, right? Okay, now I want you to get something for me. Or can you get a piece of paper? I don't know where you are, right? If you're just tuning in driving, then that's okay, of course. But if you are you're at home, grab a piece of paper, would you? And grab a pen and pencil, because I want to take this seriously, right? I really want you to experience executive function firsthand rather than talk about it, because it's theoretical. These are very abstract things, right? So let's make it alive. Grab a piece of paper if you can, a pencil or a pen, no calculator, all right? We only start allowing calculators at grade 5 next year, right? So not this year for Isabel. Are we all ready? Okay, do I have the question? Okay, I'm going to start timing you, everybody. So let's count down now. Okay, I'm just going to give you 2 minutes. Can you look at this question? And then I'll be silent for a little bit, okay? And then see how. And if you get the answer, please do not write it down on the chat yet. We'll do it together. Or maybe you can write it down on the chat. It's fine. Because it's really the process. All right. So even if you know the answers, you need to know how you're going to get it. And I shall be silent. It's 1 minute past. Anybody got an answer yet? Thank you, Sharon. Part A, I suppose, yeah? Feel free to share your answer if you have. No answers? Math teachers? Maybe math teachers is got an unfair advantage. Okay, I'll be quiet. Oh. Anybody? Two minutes has passed. Do we need more time? Anybody needs more time? Or have you given up? Can you talk to me on chat? What do you want me to do? We've passed the adult time. Should we keep going? Okay, let's keep going. Mary, Sharifa. Yeah. Okay, given up. I'm assuming. 6. We've got 12. Question mark any? I do not know where to start. 10 maybe. Oh no, 2. Maybe I'm not sure. My brain, okay. I think, okay, Claudia, 10, I think. Okay, are you still thinking? Patricia, probably 12. Nice. Okay, anybody else? Okay, Ari, I need help to figure out Hamida. Sophia, you've got 12 and 104. Nice. Okay, so that's about 4 minutes. That was about 3 minutes now. 10.2, 10.4, or 104. Yep, sorry. Okay. 104, 12, Maria. Okay, so that was about 3 minutes, yeah. 12, Maria, yep. Yes, okay, you've got a few 12s coming up now, yeah. B's 144. So we've got 30 seconds left and we will have to move, yeah. Okay, counting down. 104. Those who can actually come up with numbers, I admire you, yes. Okay, time's up, ladies and gentlemen. You really should move on because it's question number 43. We have a few more questions. The child got to go on, yeah. Okay, so let's look at this. Okay, now we have to move on to those who are still trying to solve this question. Now, first of all, Singapore math, I love Singapore math, right? With people from MOE, I think it's hard, but I think it's good hard, but really, really quite hard. I think we probably need more scaffolding in the teaching if you're looking at, challenging thinking. But it's a wonderful, wonderful curriculum. I think that really teaches our children to think, but it's demanding because thinking is hard work. Yeah. So we're going to I have some questions. Anyone gave up before the time is up? I think there was some, right? Because we were chatting already. Some people, yeah. Some people, yeah. Yes. Anybody? Come on. Yeah. I mean, that's fine, right? And so, yes. Yeah. We gave up. Yep. Okay. Now, yeah, some people are pressing on. No, that's good. All right. But some of us, yeah, I'm still trying. Very good. Vandana, all right. You keep going. And, any other thoughts or emotions that come into your mind? Now I'm trying to really get you to feel executive function. Did anybody have any thoughts that is insightful to you or persistence? Very nice, Sharon. All right. And anybody else, like what other thoughts? Okay, you told yourself, let's persist. That's good. Okay. Any other frustrations? Lost. Okay. Hopeless. Not sure where to start. Thank you, Leanne. You've got some nice words there. All right, so you feel lousy, yeah? Like once you're not sure, panic, Karen. Yeah, confused. Okay, a bit of frustration, Jacqueline. Yeah, thank you for sharing. This is all helpful, right? I'm upset that I don't know how to solve this seemingly easy question, right? Yeah, why is this happening at 8:30? Why are you here, right? You're here to learn about not an executive function, not to do math. Unintelligent, insecure, processing each sentence, making meaning, and looking at the diagram. Forgetting, okay? I feel intrigued by the problem, but anxious because of the time pressure. No, these are very, very good, right? Because you are talking about different bits of executive function coming in and trying to work or with you, for you, or against you. Now, let's look into that. By the way, I'm going to give you the answer. Not a lot of steps, right? So it is a 2-point question, right? It is 10 plus 10 plus MP plus MP plus 4 plus 4 is 52, right? Because you can push out. And if you then count for MP, that is actually 12. And then the area, you can, once you have the MP right, this is a square, KNOR is a square, so is 12 by 12 is 144. So then shaded, unshaded part is 3 parts. So you divide by 3 and then get the shaded part. So just a few steps, you can get there. But it's crazy, isn't it? It's hard. It is a hard question. When you know it, you think, oh, of course, right? The light bulb goes up, or maybe not, still not, right? Still processing. But I have to move on. I do want to give you all the answers, right? And at least, how Isabel was. I didn't really even check. I just kind of know, the parts, without going through the actual, number. But I want to really talk about what was going on as we were approaching that question. Okay, so let's look at that question. I think the very first thing that we might have to do, and I'm sure everybody will agree as we are reading, is that you have to pay attention. Now, some people might read And then you get anxious because it seems the answer is not popping into your mind immediately, right? And then you read again, and then your mind is still in a blank, as if the words are not being processed. The attention is actually not on the words, right? You're probably, you could be hijacked by anxiety, right? But if you're really paying attention, you are really on the words. Yes, there might be a comprehension issue and an understanding issue. Okay. But if you're feeling like, okay, you are looking at the clock a little bit, you are looking, frantically up and down, then it's more it's kind of emotions have come in and disturb the attention and focus. Now, there's attention and focus at different parts as well, right? Because I think is this because if you read, right, KNOR is a square, right? But if you're not careful and you imagine that this is the square, then you think the MP is 10 by 10, because you am thinking that is this KMPR, right? So that could be another issue, right? So when we talk about attention, right, it could be attention that's breaking down at various points. It could be just visualizing attention, right? Like I'm not careful, KNOR, I'm thinking it's KMOR, all right? Or I'm being careless, right? Visually, MN, right? And I'm landing here. So I think 10, obviously MP then is 10, and I jump into that. Okay, then that will be a careless error, because we're actually saying that KN OR is this big one. Your 10 is this short line. All right. So, and this outer one is the square. So you still don't know what is MP. All right. So attention is obviously needed. I think that's easy to understand. Attention, we don't really need much explanation. But I just want you to know that attention can break down at different parts, right? Whether it's a simple N becomes M kind of attention, right? And again, it could be a visual issue that is contributing to the attention. If you're not very good with visual discrimination, okay, that means when you look at a puzzle, you don't like to play puzzles, for example, okay? Because you find it's very hard to put the different pieces together. They all look the same to you, right? M and N might not look very different. Then it could be a visual discrimination issue that is then mimicking as attention issue. But whatever it is, output is an error. Okay, you got M as N, whether it's from visual or you were not paying attention. But it helps to really know, right? That's why we do assessments, because then we can know it's a visual problem. We do visual exercises. No, visual is fine, it's an attention problem. Then we do attention exercise. And that's how a weakness in one area can mimic another area, especially for attention. Okay, so just by those examples that I give you, so you need your attention and focus to be working, and then obviously you need working memory to be working. Now, what is working memory, right? Because working memory, right, you are now thinking, I'm just switching to this side now, right? But you are now pulling information from your mind, right? So the area of a square, is length times breadth, right? And perimeter is 2 times your length plus your breadth. But you don't have the information. So you're thinking to yourself, this diagram is missing info. All I have is 4 and 10. It's silly, right? You're starting to get upset now, or maybe a bit lost, a bit not very intelligent, but you're trying to pull up from memory. What else do I know? Okay, now working memory, I want to go in a little bit more, right? A lot of people know short-term memory is just kind of like rote memorizing. Working memory is your thinking memory. Okay, now I have a definition here. I'm going to come back to that, right? And so the definition is the small amount of information that can be held in the mind and used in the execution of cognitive tasks. It is a thinking memory. So it's more thinking than more memory, okay? It's holding information, small bits of information, but the key is really to help you to think through, all right? To pull information from your long term as well. So let's go back into this. So the model, right? The brain model of working memory, according to the people who study the parts of the brain, right? So they're suggesting that, so the central executive, right, is where it resides, right? But working memory has 2 parts. One is the visual part, visual spatial scratch pad, and then the other part is your auditory, your sound part, your phonological loop is what it's called. Then you have the episodic buffer. So what does it mean, right? Now, this is just an episodic buffer is just an integration part. Okay, but for working memory to be solid, you really need good visual spatial skills. So we're coming back to visual skills again. now is coming up in your memory. That means your eye in the mind. Okay, when you're processing memory, you need to have the visualizing ability in your head. So you might have no image in front of you. You've got to be able to see things in your head and hear and sound out things in your mind. And that impacts your memory capacity. Okay, so in your mind, you're pulling out. I know the formula, right? I know the width or the breadth is the short one, the length is the long one. I know my formula, area equals to length times width. That's my formula. That's words, right? But I can integrate them into one unified memory. Okay, I can pull out this formula, right? But I can't solve that problem, right? Because the formula is lacking. I don't have the data. I don't have my width and my length. This is the problem, right? I am lacking, in the parameter question, you certainly are lacking a lot, right? And you need to find MP in order to calculate your area. But so your working memory is being pulled, but it is not successful, unfortunately. What else do we need to know about working memory? The capacity, we're not talking about long-term storage. So if I ask you, what is the capital of capital of France? You say Paris. That's your long-term memory. Your long-term memory is huge. I can ask you a lot of things, right? But your working memory, it's small capacity, right? It's not your storage, it's your thinking. So it doesn't hold a lot of things because it's your workhorse, right? It's got to think and process. And it needs to manipulate information through our visual and our auditory networks. So visual spatial is an important skill to develop. Our auditory, our language skills is supporting working memory. You need to have good focus, and obviously attention leads everything. The moment your attention is not there, your working memory can't work anymore. You're already hijacked. Yeah, heavily affects school performance and IQ, and it can be strengthened. All right, it's all these skills can be strengthened because our brain, the more and more we understanding, the more we understanding it, it's like a muscle. So now that part is working memory. Now we're busy pulling out the formula. As I've said, you're tapping onto your working memory, but it's failing you. Your formula has come out. You are trying to use that formula and apply here with all the information that you have, and it is not successful. So I am stuck. Now, this is when hopelessness probably start to kick in a little bit more. I am lost. You reread again. You still don't have the information. You pull out that formula perhaps again for parameter and your area, right? And you're not getting anywhere. Then this is when cognitive flexibility comes in. You think, I have to think another way. Put my formulas aside. It's not working now. Change strategy. You got to adapt. Something is not happening. It's not working. Okay? I'm wasting time now. Time is ticking by. I can't keep forcing the formula. I just don't have the data, right? So what happens is that I need to think in a different way. Okay, sorry, I need to think in a different way. Yeah, so I can use the push out method. Now, though, for those who wants to know how it's done, yeah. So basically, if you cut this into a line here, this line, you can bring it out to here, right? This line, you can bring it out to here. This line, you bring out to here. It's actually the perimeter of 10 by MP. That's why 10 plus MP plus 10 plus MP, okay, which is here. But you need to add these two, okay, plus 4 and plus 4, okay, gives you this total because this is what you have. You have the total. But we're not here to solve the problem. We're here to understand the processes. Because when we think about math, we often think about the technique, the formulas, right? Practice, lots and lots of questions. But actually, these skills are so important. They are supporting you in learning, and applying those different strategies. Okay, for Isabel, she's like, once she got the strategy, all right, just by slicing off here and then creating this big square, right? She can calculate the parameter, and she got to 12 quite quickly. All right. Now, it is cognitive flexibility that caused her to change track. If she was inflexible, and I can tell you my daughter did not used to be flexible. Cognitive flexibility was something that I was working on, right? And obviously we can build it. It's something that I've been working very hard on, and certainly very proud and happy, when she could change, right? Typically, Isabel would just tell me, I haven't learned this yet. I don't know, too hard, I just don't want to do it, right? And say, no, I just don't know. Teacher didn't teach me enough. All right. So, but to now apply some of these thinking, right, is when you then need the skill. Okay. So cognitive flexibility is about the ability to switch between thinking about over two different concepts or to think about multiple concepts simultaneously. Okay. So you are switching. So it's really the ability to adapt, to the ability to very quickly find the fastest way to solve each problem and then execute it. Okay, very, very important skill when you're solving problems, and definitely for exam performance. Yeah, at the higher level you go, right? I mean, when you're starting to do your GMAT and all that, right? And yeah, it can come, there's so many variations it can come in. So you've got to have great flexibility and not be focused on any one kind of exclusive, train of thought or method. All right. So your cognitive flexibility starts to come in. So now we're adding to all the executive skills that is supporting us in the solving of this question, right? So you have your attention focus, yeah, your working memory, which didn't help us, certainly not at the formula part, right? Then you got to go back to your memory and then switch and see, have I seen this somewhere before? Is there another thing that I could apply, right? And can I adapt, okay? And come up with another way of solving it without using the formulas, right? Because it's totally different. Yeah. Okay, now at that point, you might also be being very mindful of time. And that adds to the anxiety probably, okay? But it's not a bad thing. That's actually self-monitoring, because there will be children who will just keep going and they don't know that they really should be moving on, right? Because they're not monitoring themselves. So those are the kids, if you have a student that's constantly, not having the time to write the conclusion for the essay perhaps, right? Or missing the questions at the end, they're not able to plan the time. It could be, apart from planning, right? It could also be self-monitoring, because you've got to be aware. All right, it's got to be a time clock somewhere that's telling you, hello, gotta move on. I mean, the kids don't have stopwatches like me telling them you have half a minute left. They don't, right? But they have to then realize that, oh no, I'm wasting too much time. It's only 2 marks, right? I got to move on. Okay, so you're self-monitoring. So you got to check how many more questions do I have? Okay, maybe flip to the back and see I got 2 more questions versus I got 10 more. I better move. Or maybe this is the last question. I can afford some time to work on it because I finished the rest. All right. So these are all skills that are happening without us knowing, right? Do I have enough time? Look at the clock. Look at what you have to do, and think, do a little quick planning in your mind. Okay. So what's your goal? Your goal is to get a good score, right? And so you're coming back to your mind now. These are really very abstract, and because we don't see them like the way we see a formula, right? So when a child is underperforming, we're like, you just need more practice, or what's wrong with you? You're not learning. There are so many sub skills that are so important in the exam situation, right? So now the child has to decide, I got to plan right there and then. I have monitored myself. I am running out of time. What do I do very quickly, right? What do I do? Should I skip to the second part? Forget it. 2 marks. I'm just going to give up. It's not worth it. All right. What's the best use of my time now? I got to do a quick planning right there. As I'm trying to struggle with this, I've got all these other thoughts, that's going on in the back of our mind. Obviously, some children might have broken down by then. Why? Because the anxiety at that point, by the time you realize the time, is totally overwhelming you. Okay. So some of us, this might have hit very early on where you are already wanting to give up. Okay, and that's your impulse inhibition. Are you at that point able to quiet this state of panic, this state of utter hopelessness? I'm just going to fail this exam completely, right? Because that's when you really, really have to kick in your inhibition really hard. The difference between the child who's just going to break apart and say, I just blanked out, and the child, the person who said, no, I'm not going to give up. Let's persevere. Let's plan a little bit. Let's come back, and decide what I'm going to do. Okay. So your impulse inhibition is huge, right? Right. I want to give up. I don't give up. Okay. Those inner conversations that's going on, that's your executive function trying to do its job, right? So then it depends on your mindset. right? So if all the time the child's used to very negative mindset, I can't do it, I'm a loser, then those wordings are going to play a much bigger role than a child who's been, having spent time telling themselves, right, I'm weak, but I can do it. I can do it. I just haven't gotten to it yet. Calm down, do my mindfulness. So all of those skills, that we are now practicing, or advocating is going to kick in ways that we do not see, right? That's all just conversations and battles in the mind. Okay, but they're very, very active and very, very real for the child. So impulse inhibition, so it's the ability to inhibit natural, so what's spontaneously coming in. And even if it's not natural, maybe habitual, the child may be born very neutral. But if habitually, they've got very negative experiences or very negative feedback that's been given to them, not very supportive or constructive, kind of environment, right? The habitual response or a dominant emotional or behavioral response is going to take over. All right. So you have to stop all of this. Inhibit is to stop, because you want to select the more appropriate emotion or behavior. You got to come back to your goal. Remember, we have a goal. What is the goal? The goal is to get a good mark. The goal is to just try my best. All right. So I'm not going to let it. I got to decide what is overarching for me. Some people, what's the overarching goal? I just want to get out of this place. I just want to get rid of this behavior, So they don't want to look at it anymore. They are stopped. The goal is gone, right? It's really the emotional and the inhibition that's not able to suppress those negativity. All right. And the amygdala is now firing and giving you all this real fight and flight. It's very real. The heart is pounding, and you're sweating, and thinking faculties are just shutting down. Okay, so inhibition is extremely helpful, apart from learning, right? It's affecting us socially. So children who can control their impulses are a lot more independent, have more friends, right? They're better at making friendships, because they can hold themselves back and let somebody else have a turn, right? Because, and not always, I want it now, all right? They don't interrupt, they're able to take turns, they have better vocabularies, they're more confident, they make better choices, right? So these are all skills that are very, very important, not just for the math question, but certainly for that as well. And improvement in this ability is particularly dramatic during early childhood. That's why you start with a child that is just, a tantrumy and your terrible twos. And then they go through the growth spurt, between 3 and 5, where they're really learning group skills, classroom skills, self-management skills. That's why we stress so much on emotional management during the early years, right? It's a very good time, because emotional management, how are you going to inhibit? It goes into building response inhibition or impulse inhibition, which is really building your executive function, right? The whole network of skills that is eventually going to help you as you sit for a tough paper like that, because it's very real, and we went through the exercise because I wanted all of us, to feel like that. Okay, so so you can see that, a question like that. So I thought that we would do it differently rather than just going through, the theoretical definitions and all of that, but to really experience that. So this is one math question, and to also, build the linkages between the academic, right? So sometimes I think that we're obviously very concerned with the academic, the content, right? The children have to be taught. They need to learn the areas and the parameter, right? They need to learn what it is. They need to have good visual skills, and there are other skills that I didn't mention, right? A lot of times the focus is on the academic teaching part. But you can teach and teach, but if you don't have the flexibility, the working memory is not there, right? Not only pulling up the formulas, but searching in all your long-term memory, all the different strategies. What else can I use, right? If you don't have those, right, then you find that whatever teaching, however many classes you might go to, or with the best teacher, some of these might still not be successful for the child, right? But obviously, it is important, the teaching part, but you have all these skills that's supporting that part. Now, some of the other skills I didn't mention, and they don't really fall in the purview of executive function, but they are equally, if not more important as well, would be your language skills. Obviously the children will need to be able to read this question. So we assume that was a given, right? That they had the vocabulary and the understanding, the language processes. And number two is also the visual. Math is a very, very spatial subject. When we talk about quantities, 10 and 4, these are symbols, right? It's something to your eyes. It's just a line and a circle to the eyes. But this has a spatial value. 10 is a bigger space than 4. In Singapore, we do model math, right? We represent it in bars. We are Singapore math again. I love it. It's very, very, it's developed in a very a brain-based way, I think, very aligned to neuroscience. But then, if the child's not good in visualization, right? I don't draw very well. I have untidy handwriting, and then math could be very difficult. All right, because I'm not even able to really understand my concepts because fundamentally this does not make sense, right? So it's not even at the storage level, it's pure visualizing. Okay, some kids are better at that and some are not, right? Some can see the different patterns and some of us, we stand that we cannot see the patterns. All right, so visualizing skills, again, another set of cognitive and abstract skills that we don't really think about, but, very, very important as well, that's supporting that learning and making this whole, academic piece really, really flourish, right? When you have all these different pieces in the brain that's kind of working together in sync and supporting that. Okay, so I hope it was a successful attempt. I'm sorry if this is too hard and and demoralize everybody at the start of what is going on with that question. All right, or if you're troubled, you're still trying to solve it, right? So it was really more trying to put you through an experience of you're under pressure of time. I told you it's grade 4, meaning that, oh no, I should know it and then I don't know it, all that pressure. But these are all very real, that when our kids go into the exam room, that it's coming up for them, whether they are able to think through or not in the different aspects. Yeah. So now to summarize, so just coming back to executive function, right? So we know that we have these goal orientation skills that's responsible for your planning and organization. And I've just used the one math question. All right. Now, planning could be non-academic planning altogether. It could be a project, right? It could be a piece of a hobby. Okay, you're trying to build some toys for your pet. Okay, my niece was just she has a little a hamster, and then she wanted to build something over the term, right? She's collecting different pieces of things. So there is a plan. How am I going to get to that, right? So it's not really purely academic, but certainly, as you can see, you need to plan, right? In within the little one question or within the bigger of how am I going to even plan for my exams? Do I have the schedule, right? Or plan for my hamster cage, I'm going to build these toys. What are the tools? What is the sequences? What are the steps? Okay, so all this is part of planning. All right, that same part of the brain that is orientating you to help you to achieve your goal. All right, that's that part of the brain. Now, regulation, as I've mentioned, there's emotional regulation, right? So you might not be very physically active, but you could be boiling up or breaking down inside. All right. So there's children, it could be impulsivity in different ways, right? So it could be a motoric way. So you have motor inhibition where the kids all over the place, they're out of their seat, right? They're jumping up, they can't, hold back themselves or their actions. But then you can also have the emotional inhibition or thought inhibition, right? You have the negative wordings keep coming at you. Oh, you're just not good. Just give up. Just give up. Come on, you can't do it. You're not good at math. You hate math anyway, right? We've got some of those conversations, right? And you have a hard time suppressing it. Okay, so it could come in thought, it could come in emotions, it could come in motor. It need not be all of it. It could just be one area, perhaps, that a child is perhaps a little bit weaker in, right? And then, for example, if it was thought, impulsivity. Next week, I'm going to be talking about mindfulness, right? Now, that is a very, very good technique for thought inhibition, right? And you are quieting now. Be quiet, be quiet. Just tell your mind, be quiet, right? So it's different. It's very, very specific. So when we talk about the brain, we have these big terms. When we are really thinking about
building up, we need to go narrow. And because it's like, where's the muscle? We're going to find it. How are we going to train that muscle? It's like your biceps. You know, I'm not going to be able to do crunches and improve my biceps, right? So that's why, you know, it becomes important for us to nail down into the detail and then to understand your child, you know, as detailed as we can so that our strategy can be as tailored as possible. Yeah. And fine tuned. Now, then you have all your cognitive skills, right? Attention and focus. This is often blamed for many things, right? Cognitive flexibility, gaining a lot more attention, right? And your working memory, but they all work together. Without attention, this is the big brother, you know, nothing works, right? So your working memory is your workhorse, right? Your thinking, your connection between what you're seeing and your long term. Right. So the more knowledge you build, right, the more working memory has got to work with. But you, of course, have to be adaptable, right, in searching for what am I going to use, okay, in your long-term memory, and then working together with working memory. Okay, so you are kind of like smooth operator, right? Moving from one thought to another thought process, yeah, and allowing yourself, or you're just kind of banging down, you know, one road. Okay, and finally, monitoring what's going on. How am I doing? How am I doing? Right? How am I doing right now? Am I okay for time? Right? Am I accurate? Yeah. What am I lacking? And again, it's not just in the question, it is monitoring yourself. How far am I from the exams? It has to do with planning, right? You monitor to improve your plans, all right, or your strategies. Okay. So it guides you along. You must come back and see, check in, right? And therefore, oh, I'm monitoring. Oh, I know that I'm really weak in geometry. I got to go and do more areas and parameters question, right? A bit more question types so that I build my repertoire of strategies, yeah, and I have more options to do that. So you know exactly how you are going to plan. Okay, and it's a skill as well. So we take it for granted. Some people are very good at that. They're always checking in, and we know some of us are not very good at that. All right, we're behind time in our project. You know, we don't really know when somebody asks us, "Where are you?" Oh, I don't know. You just kind of lost, right? In all, you just know there's so much, but you don't know where you are, what is missing. All right, you don't have the view of yourself like this map. Where are you? Okay, you just know, okay, I'm going to do this, but you don't know where you are on the map. All right, so that's another skill, that's self-monitoring. Okay, so again, you know, attention and focus. So I've gone through that. I wouldn't go through the scientific definitions. All right, so that's just switching, and then self-monitoring is coming back to check, and planning and organization, etc. That's it. Okay, do we have any questions? I don't see a lot of questions, right? And the next part, right? I know, you know, we want to know then, now that we know the skills, okay, the next webinar will be a bit more about, will be about how then do we tackle each of these skills? What are the best strategies? You know, if a particular skill is lacking, you know, how are we going? What can we do, you know, to help us build that skill? Before we go on to the last of the third, will be about managing weapons of mass distraction, you know, i.e. our screen time and all. Now, here is the feedback form. So do give us some feedback, whether you like that, you hated that. Okay. And whether, more importantly, apart from the question, whether it helped you, you know, to get a better appreciation, perhaps, of these very abstract skills. Yeah. And often it's hard, right? It's like in a vacuum, very technical, very theoretical. So that's a little attempt to help you link up with your executive function. Nancy, do I have any questions?
Yes, you do, Cheryl. I think we maybe take a few minutes here to answer one or two questions. All right, there is one question. How early must we intervene, and when will it be considered too late for intervention? And how do you know if a child is struggling with visual perceptual skills?
Oh, sorry, what was the question about? Like, what was the...
There are two questions, sorry, from one person. And how early must we intervene?
Yeah.
When will it be considered too late for intervention?
Okay, if we are talking about executive function, it's not too late. The executive function matures by 25. That's the last part. All right. Some of the visual processing, you know, auditory processing, probably a little bit earlier, right? But you can intervene at any age. We have helped university students, improve their language skills, their auditory processing. So it's never too late. Now, is there a difference to get in early? Absolutely. You have the benefit of youth. You have the benefit of changeability, meaning you need less exercising and less practice to give the same change because you're trying to build up the muscle. Okay, think of it as a muscle in the brain. When you are young, you need less exercise and then the muscle is strong already. Okay, if you are older, you need to do a bit more reps, okay, in order for that muscle to build because it's more mature, right? So you need harder work, more practices, more time. But if you give, you follow the protocols, you can still build each of these network, whether visual, auditory, or executive function. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Was there a second question?
Yes, how do we know if a child is struggling with visual perceptual skills?
Okay, visual perceptual skills. So the way to do it is that, you need that part of the brain to perform areas related to that. So if you think about visual perception, you will want to think about visual tasks. Now, what are visual tasks? For a very young child, coloring is the first visual task. Any preschooler that does not like to color, I look a little bit more. Why would a child not like to color? Coloring, you can bring life into black and white sheet. You should love that. But when it is not enjoyable, then you have to think, is it, coloring within the lines that they cannot perceive it? Of course, it could be a fine motor issue as well. But you're basically looking at visual spatial kind of task. Math is a very spatial subject. Now, this is from brain research, right? And also we did a webinar earlier on the math brain, right? It's fundamentally a spatial subject. So, and you need to, it's just playing around with spatial quantities, but we use symbols, we use words to represent that spaces. Okay, Chinese versus English, for example. Chinese is a lot more pictorial than the 26 English alphabet. So the demand on visual processing is a lot heavier. So if you are seeing that a child is not good in these tasks, coloring, handwriting, perhaps math, perhaps your Chinese writing, perhaps ball activities, right? Catching a ball is about your visual spatial prediction of where the ball is going to land, right? And then, it could then indicate to you that could be an area of weakness for the child. Yeah, I hope I answered that question.
All right. Thank you, Cheryl. Cheryl, now there are a few questions coming in. Do you think we have time for one more?
Yeah, maybe just one more.
All right. Okay. There is a question from Sai Go. How can we help a child build more control over impulses? What would be your tips?
We will be talking about it next week. Can you come back?
All right. So, Sai, make sure you join us next 2 more weeks. Is it?
I will need more than a few minutes to talk about it.
All right.
Yeah, but it is a very good question, isn't it? I mean, it is so important when you realize, how we need to quieten down our minds or our emotions at the right time, right? So let's keep all the strategies to the next week, right? So please next in a fortnight's
Next
time.
week,
yeah. So please join us again where we talk about strategies and then solutions, how we're going to then tackle these areas.
Right.
Sounds good,
so
Nancy?
Yes, in 2 more weeks.
Yes.
Right. We're running out of time.
Yeah. Okay.
And thank you, everybody.
Yeah. And no, I'm not teaching personally, but we have a whole team of wonderful teachers. Thank you, everybody. I hope that it has helped you. All right, my little experiment was successful. I'm not sure. I hope I didn't stress you too much. But thank you for joining us. And thank you, panelists and Nancy. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you, Cheryl.
Yeah, so we just leave it on for a couple of seconds and then we shall turn it off. Thank you, everyone. See you again in 2 weeks' time.
Thank you. You can fill in our feedback form.
Yes, please give us some feedback. All right. Cheryl is in Singapore. Give us some feedback there. And we will try and get back to you. See you. Yep. Thank you for the feedback form again. So there's the link out there again. Okay.
Thank you.
So I will off now. Yeah.
Yes.
I'll end the webinar.
Thank you. Bye-bye, everybody.
Okay, bye-bye. Thank you. Bye.